He rose from the streets to become Hollywood's toughest gangster on screen. But what they don't tell you is how James Cagney's real life was filled with hardship and heartbreak. From family tragedies to bitter betrayals, the Yankee Doodle dandy star's story proves that fame can't shield you from life's cruel twists. Rags to riches, early struggles, and family tragedies. Cagney's life began in poverty and loss. Born in 1899 to an Irish-Norwegian working-class family in Manhattan, he was the second of 7 children, but 2 of his siblings didn't survive infancy. Baby James himself was so sickly that his mother honestly feared he wouldn't even live long enough to be baptized. He later blamed their ill health on the dirt-poor conditions they lived in. The Lower East Side was crowded, unsanitary, and treacherous for a struggling family. Tragedy struck again when James was 19. His father, James Sr., caught the deadly 1918 Spanish flu and died during that pandemic. In a cruel twist, a priest arrived too late to give last rites before his father passed, a painful memory that stuck with Cagney for life. Overnight, young Jimmy Cagney had to become the man of the house, abandoning his college dreams to support his mom and siblings. To keep his family afloat, Cagney hustled with odd jobs from morning till night. He worked as a copy boy at a newspaper, a book custodian at the public library, a bellhop, and even a night doorkeeper at a hotel. Every penny he earned went straight home to put food on the table. It was a hard-knock life that forced Cagney to grow up fast. He later said he felt sorry for kids who have it too easy because he learned resilience the hard way on the streets. And indeed, the tough, scrappy survivor he became would serve him well in Hollywood. Fate intervened in the most unexpected way to launch Cagney's showbiz career. While working at the New York Public Library, he met a woman named Florence James who noticed something special in him. Cagney was a natural performer without even knowing it. He'd learned to tap dance as a kid on the sidewalks and had a knack for street fighting and boxing. Florence got him a foot in the door in theater, and soon Jimmy found himself doing the unthinkable. He joined a chorus line where all the dancers were dressed as women. Cagney wasn't embarrassed. In fact, the shy kid discovered that when he stepped on stage in costume, he could become someone else entirely. That rush of performance ignited a passion in him. After years of barely scraping by, Cagney finally saw a way out of poverty. He was going to be an entertainer. He worked in vaudeville and Broadway throughout the 1920s, honing his craft and even meeting the love of his life. In 1922, he married Frances Billy Vernon, a fellow performer, and their partnership would last the rest of his life. By the end of the decade, Cagney was ready for bigger things. He had no idea that the coming years would bring both incredible success and new challenges that tested his mettle. Hollywood stardom and the cost of success. In 1930, James Cagney went to Hollywood and hit it big fast. His breakthrough role came in The Public Enemy, 1931, as a ruthless gangster, the movie that made him a star overnight. One unforgettable scene shows Cagney smash a grapefruit into actress Mae Clarke's face, a moment so shocking and iconic that it's still talked about today. That film's success launched Cagney into the Hollywood stratosphere. Suddenly, he was one of Warner Brothers' and top stars, known for playing gritty, hard-edged characters with a charisma no one could ignore. Critics raved that his portrayal of a petty killer was scarily realistic. Off-screen, though, the humble New Yorker remained a regular guy who never forgot where he came from. Fame brought fortune, but also fights. Cagney quickly learned that the Hollywood studio system could be just as cutthroat as any gangster film. Warner Brothers kept him under a strict contract and initially underpaid him, despite his films earning millions. Jimmy wasn't about to be pushed around. In fact, he walked out twice in his career to demand fair treatment. By 1935, after being denied a raise he felt he deserved, Cagney boldly sued Warner Brothers for breach of contract and left the studio altogether. That was practically unheard of in those days. Most actors didn't dare challenge the studio bosses, but Cagney did. And he won a better deal on his own terms. He earned a reputation as a man who stood up for himself. Warner's chief, Jack L. Warner, even nicknamed him the professional gangster, because Cagney opposed anything he thought was unfair. Whether it was being forced to do publicity or donate to studio-sponsored charities, if Cagney smelled something fishy, he said no, loudly. This independent streak endeared him to fellow actors who saw him as a champion for their rights. But it also meant he was often at odds with powerful studio heads. The cost of success didn't end there. At the height of his fame, Cagney also had to defend his patriotism and even his life. Red Scare accusations. In the 1930s, rumors swirled that Cagney was a communist sympathizer. In 1934, and again in 1940, he was accused of having leftist ties, supposedly because he donated to striking workers. The FBI took notice. Cagney fiercely denied the charges, and ultimately he cleared his name. A congressman publicly vindicated him, confirming Cagney was no communist. Still, the accusations hurt, casting a shadow over the all-American star. Showdown with the mob. As president of the Screen Actors Guild in the 1940s, Cagney went to battle against a mob-controlled union that was extorting Hollywood studios. The Chicago Mafia didn't appreciate Cagney's interference. According to Hollywood lore, gangsters even plotted to kill him by dropping a heavy studio light on his head, making it look like an accident. One day, Cagney's wife Billy got a chilling phone call falsely claiming he'd died in a car crash, likely a mob threat. Thankfully, an old friend, actor George Raft, who had real underworld connections, intervened and convinced the mobsters to call off the hit. Cagney survived, but the incident shows how dangerous standing up for what's right could be, even in Hollywood. Through all these trials, James Cagney maintained a tough exterior. He continued delivering powerhouse performances, from the song and dance patriot George M. Cohan in Yankee Doodle Dandy, for which he won an Oscar, to the psychotic gangster Cody Jarrett in White Heat. But even as his career hit top of the world Cagney's personal life was heading for some heartbreaking twists. A gentle soul behind the tough guy image. Despite his pugnacious on-screen persona, Jimmy Cagney was a family man at heart. He had married young and stayed devoted to his wife Billy for 64 years. Those who knew him off-screen often remarked how gentle and unassuming he really was, a far cry from the snarling gangsters he played. On their farm in Martha's Vineyard, the Cagneys lived simply, raising horses and enjoying the quiet life when Hollywood wasn't calling. Friends say he was happiest being out in the country, away from the limelight, just one of the guys at local clam bakes. For years, James and Billy wanted children, but struggled to have them. Eventually, they turned to adoption. In 1940, they adopted a newborn boy and named him James Cagney Jr., and soon after, a baby girl they named Kathleen, nicknamed Casey. Cagney adored his children. Home movies showed him playing with them by the seashore, rowing boats and enjoying precious family time away from Hollywood. A friend recalled that the kids loved their dad and he loved them, describing Cagney as a doting father who would read them bedtime stories. By all accounts, the Cagneys were a tight-knit family in those early years, full of love. But as the children grew up, trouble began to cloud that happy picture. James Cagney Jr. and his sister Casey struggled to find their own way in life. Young Jimmy tried joining the Marines and later dabbled in music, but he never quite settled into a stable career. Kathleen married and had kids of her own, but that marriage ended in divorce. Both son and daughter started leaning on their famous father for financial help, and not in small ways. Cagney, generous to a fault, opened his wallet and gave his adult children significant support. Unfortunately, the generosity backfired badly. His daughter Casey received vast amounts of money, and even several condominium units from her dad, and proceeded to burn through all of it almost immediately. His son was gifted a large farm, one of Cagney's prized properties, under the condition that he would maintain it as a working farm. Instead, James Jr. promptly sold the farm for $1.2 million, cashing in on his father's gift with no intention of keeping his promise. When Cagney and Billy discovered what their children had done, they were devastated. This betrayal of trust cut deep. The actor and his wife, described as heartbroken by the callous behavior of their son and daughter, felt they had no choice but to distance themselves. By 1982, the Cagneys became estranged from both children. Friends observed that overzealous caretakers in Cagney's later years may have worsened the rift, shielding the aging star and his wife from visitors, possibly to protect them, but effectively isolating them from family and old pals. Whatever the exact reasons, it's clear that by the time James Cagney was in his 80s, he barely spoke to his son or daughter. Imagine the heartache for a man who had valued family so much. He had given his kids everything he could, only to have it thrown away and to spend his final years without them by his side. Cagney's close friend Denny Wortman described the situation as tragic. recalling that James Jr. once visited their Martha's Vineyard farm after it was sold and wept to see the family home emptied out and stripped of mementos by caregivers handling the sale. All that history, gone. And the deeper tragedy was that father and son never truly reconciled. The final act, decline, loneliness, and legacy. As James Cagney aged, life dealt him a few more tough blows. In 1977, at 77 years old, he suffered a minor stroke that forced him into retirement. The once energetic song and dance man found himself weakened. He spent 2 weeks in the hospital and afterward needed a full-time caregiver, his longtime secretary Marguerite Marge Zimmerman, to assist him and Billy. For a man who had tapped across stages and danced down staircases on film, losing his mobility was brutal. Cagney grew depressed as he had to give up hobbies he loved: horseback riding, sailing, even painting. It seemed the fighter who had always been so active was now trapped in a body that wouldn't cooperate. With encouragement, Cagney did make a brief comeback after that stroke, appearing in a small role in the 1981 film Ragtime, in part to prove to himself he still could. On set in England, he got standing ovations from crowds of fans, reminding everyone that the old magic was still there. But age and illness were inexorable. By the mid-1980s, a series of strokes had confined James Cagney to a wheelchair, and his speech was slurred to the point that his final acting performance, a 1984 TV movie, had to be dubbed by an impersonator. The flame-haired dynamo of the 1930s was now a frail elderly man, watching from the sidelines as time took its toll. "It was heart-wrenching to watch," wrote one fan, describing Cagney's vibrant energy trapped in a wheelchair, unable to dance anymore. He also battled health complications like diabetes in his final years, which further weakened him. In early 1986, Cagney was hospitalized for what was described as a circulatory ailment related to his diabetes. Even then, ever the private man, he insisted on going back to his beloved farm to live out his days on his own terms. On Easter Sunday, March 30th, 1986, James Cagney died of a massive heart attack at his rural New York farm at the age of 86. Fittingly, he passed away in the peaceful country setting he cherished, rather than a hospital room. His funeral was modest and simple, just as he wanted. In fact, the Archbishop of New York had offered Cagney's family the Grand St. Patrick's Cathedral for the service, but they declined, knowing Jimmy would have thought that far too fancy. Instead, they held the funeral at St. Francis de Sales Church, the same humble parish where Cagney had been confirmed as a child and served as an altar boy. During the service, actor friends like Mikhail Baryshnikov and Miloš Forman acted as pallbearers, and President Ronald Reagan, a close friend from Hollywood's old days, sent a heartfelt letter that was read aloud in tribute. The most poignant moment came when Cagney's daughter Kathleen, who came despite their estrangement, broke down in sobs holding a few white carnations. Through tears, she told reporters, "He was such a private person. I never looked at him as a star." It was an emotional reminder that beyond the fame, James Cagney was a father and a husband, a real person who kept his pain private. In the end, Cagney's complicated estate revealed the rift that never healed. He left nothing in his will for his only surviving child, Kathleen. Instead, he entrusted his legacy and assets to a trust managed by his longtime secretary Marge Zimmerman and her husband. The decision spoke volumes about the broken trust with his children, though he did leave personal belongings to his wife Frances, who would live until 1994. It's a tragic footnote that one of Hollywood's highest-paid stars ended up with an estate valued at under $1 million when he died, partly because he had given so much away, and perhaps because of mismanagement by those around him. Yet, despite the sorrow and solitude of his final years, James Cagney's legacy shines on untarnished. In his prime, he was America's Yankee Doodle dandy, a symbol of energy, talent, and patriotic spirit. As one eulogist put it, Cagney was good to the core of his being, nothing at all like the gangsters he played. Audiences around the world remember him with admiration and affection, the tough guy who could tap dance, the movie gangster with a heart. Even in his darkest personal moments, Cagney never lost that goodness. He remains an icon of the golden age of film,